Some scientists. So tonight we're going to talk about fossil fuels. And fossil fuels are very, very important to us. It's something that we use in the United States every single day. Something that you use every single day. It's a natural resource. It comes from the earth. It comes from deep within the layers of rock and the earth. And you can look at this picture. This is a picture at a power plant. Whenever you see those power plants that are giving off a lot of smoke like that, a lot of those power plants are burning our fossil fuels. We use fossil fuels for energy every single day. We use it for electricity in our homes. We can use it for heat. We can use it for fuel in our car, and even to make things like plastics. Okay, so fossil fuels are very, very important to us. It's one of our major energy resources that we use right now. So we want to talk a little bit about it, know some important characteristics of fossil fuels, as well as know how they are formed, okay? So you need to make sure you are on page 78 in your journal, and we are going to talk a little bit about what fossil fuels are, okay? So the first major thing that we need to know about fossil fuels is that they are what we call non-renewable natural resources. And remember, we talked about how non-renewable means it cannot be replaced quickly. Okay? It means that we are using fossil fuels faster than the earth can remake them. So basically, once they're gone, they're pretty much gone. Okay? So we've got to conserve our fossil fuels or find other ways to get energy. Okay? So that's the first thing we need to know, is that fossil fuels are considered non-renewable natural resources. They also take millions of years to form. Okay? That's why they're non-renewable, because they take millions of years to form. Okay? So once they're gone, they're going to be gone. We can't just easily remake something that takes millions of years to form. It was a very, very long process that had to happen to give us our fossil fuels. We have 3 fossil fuels that we need to know. Remember, we are going to remember it by FF equals con. Okay, so those 3 fossil fuels we need to know are coal, oil, and natural gas. Okay, so anytime they say fossil fuels, you need to think of con. Coal, oil, natural gas. Okay, coal is a fossil fuel, oil is a fossil fuel, natural gas is a fossil fuel. We use a lot of them for the same things, and then we use some of them in different ways. But they can essentially all give us energy, and that's what we're going to focus on. We're going to focus on the fossil fuels giving us energy. Okay, so that's what fossil fuels are. Now let's talk about how they are formed. Okay, and today in class, most of the classes got to start your fossil fuel model. And you started with a layer of Cocoa Krispies and coffee, and then a layer of Fruit Loops, a layer of Bran Flakes, and then a layer of Cheerios. And you crushed it all up into tiny little sediments, and you noticed that it started to form what? Layers, okay? And we've been talking about this, and we know that when we have rocks that form in layers, and those layers are made of tiny bits of rock called sediment, we know that those layers are what type of rock? Sedimentary rock, okay? So the first thing we need to know about how fossil fuels are formed is that they are formed in layers of sedimentary rock, okay? Now, when we first modeled sedimentary rock, we just had sediments and sediments and sediments, then we compacted them and cemented them together and made a rock. Okay, there was something unique, something different that we did in our fossil fuel model. Okay, yes, we made sedimentary rock, but at the very bottom of that sedimentary rock, we modeled what? Okay, remember, we modeled dead plants and animals, or we call that organic matter. Okay, that is the key in fossil fuel formation. So yes, it forms in the layers of sedimentary rock, but it forms in layers of sedimentary rock where dead plants and animals are. Okay, so we need to make sure we understand that a key thing in fossil fuel formation is having dead plants and animals. Now, we want to make sure, so right here you can write this. A lot of times we use the word organic matter, And if you see organic matter, okay, it has that ORG, that means living thing, like organism. An organism is a living thing, which is a plant or an animal. Okay, so when we talk about organic matter, we're talking about plants and animals that have died. Okay, so we're talking about dead plants and animals from millions of years ago. Okay? All right, so the first thing we know about formation of fossil fuels is that it's going to form in the layers of sedimentary rock from dead plants and animals. And then we use our fossil fuels for energy in our homes. Okay? Specifically, we use a lot of our fossil fuels for electricity. Okay? So they are very, very important to us. Okay, so that is a little bit of information about fossil fuels. Now what we want to do is we want to make sure we understand the process of how they are formed. Okay, so we're going to use this flow chart. Remember, I have the arrows. So the arrows are going to symbolize the steps that it takes in order to form fossil fuels. Okay, so we're going to start with the very first thing that has to happen. So in order for a fossil fuel, coal, oil, or natural gas to form, an organism has to die. Okay, so the first thing that has to happen is plants and animals have to die. Okay, so we can draw, usually they fall to the bottom of a swamp. If we're forming coal, might fall to the bottom of an ocean or a lake. Okay, but we have our dead plants and animals. That's the first thing. Okay, so an organism dies. Remember, we can call that organic matter. Then, what's going to come along, just like our model, what's going to come along and bury that dead plant and animal matter? Okay, sediments. Okay, so that's the next step. Okay, so the organic matter is buried by sediments. Okay, so that's the next thing that happens, is sediments get eroded and deposited on top of our dead plant and animal, and it starts to form those layers. Okay, so first, plants and animals die, which is organic matter, and then organic matter gets buried and buried by sediments, and we know what that's going to start to do. Okay, our next key is that we have time, like millions of years. All of those sediments piling on top of each other are going to create some pressure, and then we have heat. Okay, so that time, that pressure, and that heat starts compacting and pressing all of the sediments together. And that pressure, remember when you squeezed your hands together, that pressure of them squeezing together also causes a little bit of heat. Okay? Plants and animals die. They get buried and buried and buried by sediments. Time, pressure, and heat squeeze all the layers together. Okay, so now you have a sedimentary rock, and inside of that sedimentary rock you have a fossil fuel from that organic matter, those dead plants and animals. Okay, so now we have a fossil fuel that has... Okay, so that is how a fossil fuel forms. That's how coal, oil, or natural gas form. We'll talk a little bit about their differences tomorrow. But basically what you need to know is something had to die first, our organic matter. Those dead plants and animals get buried and buried and buried by sediments. Then we have time, pressure, and heat, pushes them all together, and that forms our fossil fuels, our non-renewable fossil fuels. So that is it tonight. We will fill in the other boxes tomorrow, and I will see you then. Have a great night.